Going to speak on higher heights.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I was remembering when I was a young woman having some kind of conflict going on and having my heart broken open, and I was taking a flight somewhere, and I remember sitting by the window as the plane took off, and tears are coming out of my eyes, and I watched the plane go up above the ground. And all of a sudden the landscape started disappearing, the peoples down below and the vehicles down below and the trees and the houses, and everything became one landscape. And I noticed as the plane lifted, my grief, my brokenheartedness simply melted into that bigger landscape. I recognized that I was sorrowful about was just this tiny bit of what was happening beneath me. It's an experience I've had a lot in my years of climbing mountains and even out hiking up in the hills in Sonoma County. Rising up out of the fog, rising up beyond the stuff and the doingness of life, and recognizing there's just this one. Danny sang so beautifully about it, talking about those veils dropping away and recognizing that right where we are, life is fully present. Our mind has some idea that we're supposed to get somewhere. We want to get somewhere, particularly when we're challenged or something seems to be out there that would give us greater good. Is that true? Yeah. We want something better. We want something higher, more joyous. Ernest Holmes, the founder of our teaching, says we are always lifting our consciousness up out of the conditional. We are not ever bringing down this idea of the divine or goodness and laying it across our conditions. We are always just rising up. Since I saw you last month, two dear women from my life have had babies. Just beautiful, tiny babies. And two dear friends have died. The last one on Tuesday night. So I have spent the whole month of June sitting bedside. Something that's very familiar to me in my ministry, something I've always loved to do because it's where heart meets heart. Where all the stuff that we get caught up in drops away and becomes unimportant. But this time I was sitting with two dear friends, two men that I have known for decades. And I'd go from one bed to the other every day. And the experience of being with my friends was one of the most awesome experiences that I've ever had in my life. Somewhere in the midst of all of this, I had a birthday. And that was really sweet and kind, and I loved it actually, coming home and getting all these messages. I had cards on my stoop, and I had messages on my phone and on Facebook, so many messages of love, wishing me a wonderful new year and days ahead filled with love and adventure and good things. But from where I stood, nothing could outshine the love that I was filled with in those moments. Have you had that experience? The love was so huge. And it wasn't my love for my friends, and it wasn't their love for me. It was the love in the room. Both of my friends, so dearly, dearly loved in their communities, lots of visitors. But with each one, there were like 4 or 5 caretakers that were there every day. and through pain and exhaustion and struggle and grief and laughter, all of it intertwined, there was just this all-abiding love. And so when I started thinking about this higher heights, I thought about that opens up as we lift up out of the conditional. We see that all-inclusiveness. We talk about oneness all the time, but oneness seems so vague. It's an idea that we have, even though it's true. Even though the great mystics of all time have spoken of the one consciousness, one life. Even though the scientists talk about there's only one thing, no separation. But the experience in the human heart is simply love. An all-inclusive love in which nothing and no one is ever left out. And that was my experience this month. It was beautiful. It was painful. It was grief-filled. It was joyous. I cannot imagine a better place or better experience to have than the experience I've had. There was such a mixture of emotion, but the love was always there. One of my friends is Italian. He has big feelings and big expression, and his wife is Italian, and they have big experience together, and I've known them for decades. And there was this big love that was always there, but they would have big fights. They would snap at each other and argue and kvetch at each other. And my friend, who I adore, in that big Italian personality, would get snarky, and I love snarky humor. But his wife, not so much. And I've watched them struggle and fight, and they come to me to talk because they'd be so challenged with each other. And I watched this while Jerry laid on his deathbed. She would get her feelings hurt when he would make some joke that he thought was funny. Or they would snap at each other. He was in so much pain, and she was exhausted, and her heart was breaking. And I'd watch them snap at each other the same way they had snapped throughout the years, or her leaving the room and crying. But the difference was that now, watching them, they would immediately turn. She would run over and sit in his lap or lay beside him, and he would hold her, and they would cry together. Because they could feel that was the only thing that mattered. It was so close to their hearts. My friend said to me, I wish I had known this at the earlier part of our relationship. It would have been so different. So I'm telling you, I'm reminding myself, because when I left my friend in his body, that last death, I just wanted to live in that love. And that's really what we're called to do in this teaching, is it not? Even when we're seeking the better situation, or this house or this car or this great love, we all want that stuff, right? Or if we're in a heartbreak, our bodies are not doing well, or our loved ones hurting, or we're struggling. We want to know what Danny so beautifully sang about this morning, that we are held, that we are loved right here. And that's the good news of our teaching. It may be by a person in our life, though people that surrounded me, that I was in amidst in this time with my friends. There was so much love. But doesn't have to be the people in our lives. Because life itself is holding us, is it not? It seems so remote, But as Danny's saying, it's right here. It's not off somewhere else. It's always right where we are. It's beating our hearts. So that higher heights, that we're yearning to know, that we're reaching towards, is really a depth of being and a depth of knowing that right here we are held, safe, supported. Right here. Doesn't mean we don't cry. Doesn't mean that we're not challenged. I was talking to a friend of mine. We bought some flowers and did these dedications at our service in Santa Rosa for these two friends who have been part of this community forever. And I was talking about how it was challenging for me because people were calling me and people wanting to hug me and give me condolences, and I just wasn't feeling like I wanted that. Do you might have that experience? You know, I'm an introvert. I just want to tuck into my room and curl up in a ball. That's where I go. And she said, remember, they're just trying to love you. That's what I want to remember. And I know, no matter what you're thinking right now, that's what you want to know. That the people in your life are doing the best they know how, and that's what you're yearning to know. And that's our spiritual work, is to be that love. To listen from it, to speak from it, and to act from it. Now, I fall down. Does anybody else fall out of that sometimes?
Never.
You know, life is challenging. It's big. Right now in this country, politics are just pushing the weight of division into our face. Our job as spiritual practitioners here is not to pretend like things aren't happening, to not call things that look hurtful good or love. It's about where we stand in ourselves and what we're listening to and from. Because there's a difference between feeling connected to life and knowing I'm safe, held, and supported where I am, and then acting from that. And when I'm in that testy, unsafe place. Yes? It makes a difference where I stand, and our work, and our only work, is our own consciousness and where we're standing. That's the practice. And then to speak from that, and then to act from that, and allow that to be our guide. Ernest Holmes says, we are here to live by inspiration. Not from this chattering story, because I have a chattering story that's not user-friendly, I might say. You know, I grew up in the Deep South in the 60s, and it was not a user-friendly community for me.
Yeah.
So we're not pretending everybody's being nice. We're not pretending and denying hardship. We're not just turning away and denying that things are going on. We're facing it right where we are and calling forth that deeper knowing. Because one of the things I recognize over and over again is I don't know what's happening in this person, and I don't know what their journey is. I read something in social media the other day. You know, people love to put out nice sayings. And it said, not all people are meant to evolve. Some people are here to show us what it's like if we don't. And I read that, and I too thought, well, that's cute, that's clever, but that's not love. That's not inclusive love. That's not recognizing that I don't know the story of this person and what they're going through. Being in this teaching is so simple and sometimes so challenging, because we have to be willing to put down our story and idea. We have to be willing to rise above and go, I'm not going to cling to that and know that and name that as the truth of life. You're like this and I'm like this. This is good and this is bad. Sitting with my friends dying, I knew that death wasn't bad. I've known that for years. Sitting with people, I know it's the most natural thing in the world. It doesn't mean that I didn't hate it, that my friends were dying, that it wasn't painful. I have this idea, well, if I were the divine, I'd make it be different. Well, that's just silly thinking. So we're here to lift up and recognize I can't see the full orbed creation. Ernest Holmes speaks of this. We can't see the highest good because we can't see the highest. And so the job is simply to rise up out of the condition and for a moment recognize there's more going on than we can recognize and listen. What's mine to know and do if I'm not listening from my filter of good and bad, right and wrong? Because I have a mind that tells me what's good and bad. I know you do, because that's what the amygdala does in the brain. It tells you before you can even recognize what's going on, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, whether it's safe or not. But we're not here to just live from that reactive mind. We don't really want to live from our reactive mind, although it can be very juicy, can it not? To judge and resent, to want harm for people that look like they're doing harm. We're being called to something higher than that, and to be that. I got this new phrase from my friend. She's a body worker. She's a Feldenkrais worker. This is the wife of my good friend Jerry, and she would have to transfer him from his chair to his bed. It was a long, long process. And so she would stand in front of him with that belt you put around people when you're lifting them. And a friend of ours, this man, would stand beside her, and she'd pull him up, and they'd be holding him up, and she'd say, "Find your legs. Find your legs." And she kept doing that because every time she moved him, she would say that to him. Because he wasn't fully present in his body, and his body was hurting, and it wasn't strong anymore. So that command, find your legs, over and over and over again. I thought, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. We're finding our footing in oneness right where we are. Doesn't mean we're strong. Doesn't mean we're happy. We're finding our footing in that greater principle of life, of oneness, of divine love. So that's my invitation to all of us this morning, to find our legs, to root in that love that's bigger than our stories about good and bad, who I like and who I don't like, and walk in that. Simple work, big work, because it's again and again and again. Because no sooner do I root in that love than my chattering mind takes over. Yes? Or something happens that throws me out of that experience. That's why we come to centers. That's why we study. That's why we pray. That's why we sit over and over and over again, because it's so easy to get pulled out of that footing. And so that's the invitation. That's what we want to do, is find that. As a good teacher, a friend of mine says, don't go to the dark side. Because I have a dark side. You got a dark side? Don't go to the dark side if you want to be a light worker, she said. And our job is to be a light worker. There may be darkness out here, but our job is to be a light worker in the midst. So I was sitting with my friend, one of my friends, a couple of days ago, and his grandson's 4 years old. He comes up to his hospice bed and he leans over and he goes, "Papa, do you want to play soccer?" And my friend Lewis says, "Yes." And he says, "I'll go out and play for you." and we just all melted. And I thought, that's what we're here doing. We're playing life for those who aren't. We're playing life. We're being love for those who don't know love. We're expressing that spirit of life because we can in these bodies. That's our practice. Whatever your game is, whatever your gift is, what I know is that each one of us is part of that greater landscape, or we wouldn't be here. And our only work is to find our footing where we are and listen for what's mine to know, to speak, and to do right now. So let us do that practice that we call prayer, that we call spiritual alignment, and simply turn within. And recognizing that is fully present here, God, the divine spirit, the one life, the one source. Beyond all human knowing and naming, beyond all human perception, this one is always right here. Holding all of life, each individuated expression, holding, safe, supported, sustained, and unfolding throughout all creation as one life, one flow, one tapestry of being. It is what I am, it is where I am. Beyond my human sense of separation or fitting in or not fitting in, there is this that is my life expressing. One with this one source. I do nothing unto myself, for this one life is the very breather of my breath. It has created me in my uniqueness, and it has called me into my ministry, and it calls me home right now. And I know it as the truth of each and every one here. It is the truth of all embodied beings. For there is only this one source, this one substance out of which all is made, this one essence, this one love, all inclusive. And so we take this time to simply turn and open to that one, not missing, not lacking in any way, right here. And we listen and open to its direction. For it is that guides and directs us always. It is that brings us back to our footing again and again and again, bringing us home to that truth of being. For it is always right where we are. And so I know this as a divine invitation right now. I know this as a greater blessing of life right now, guiding, directing each one uniquely individuated, and guiding and directing, unfolding together as one landscape, one life. And so I celebrate this knowing. Oh, I am so grateful to know this truth. So grateful for this call home in conscious awareness. And knowing it is here, fully abiding. It is that opens the way before us. It is that walks with us as our constant companion. I simply rest in this awareness. Oh, safe, held, blessed, right where we are. And I let go into this one. In great gratitude and deep assuredness that this is so, I simply let it be. And so it is. Amen. Thank you.